Thanks. Hi, I'm Tait Chamberlain, he, him, a lead user experience designer at the Department of Education, Office of Federal Student Aid, where we operate as one of the largest lending banks in the nation and are probably best known for the FAFSA form. Slide 2. So first of all, I just want to get it out of the way right up front. I just want to say that I know what the title of this talk sounds like. Here you are on a deadline and you're facing that classic Venn diagram you can see here where you've got good, fast, and cheap, and you can only choose two. And here I come, yet another person telling you that the magic solution is to just do more. Well, please bear with me through this because I hope that this short talk will be a lot more helpful than just telling you to do more. Slide 3. Specifically by doing two things. First, I want to give you some compelling reasons for yourself, and probably even more for anyone else that you need to convince on why you should still prioritize user research and in particular usability testing on a deadline. Because as you choose what to sacrifice between good, fast, and cheap, that testing is going to help you be gooder, faster, and cheaper, whatever you've needed to prioritize. And second, we're going to go over some practical tips on how to squeeze in that testing because, however important it is, we all know that you can't fit a 3-week process into a 5-day deadline. So let's get started. Slide 4. How does usability testing make you gooder on a deadline and not just late? Slide 5. Well, first, I just want to acknowledge that you are going to have to sacrifice things when a tight deadline hits. We all know this. I don't have a silver bullet for you. You're in a triage situation for design. What you can see here is a sample medical triage card with 4 different categories to sort patients into, 0 through 4. And in a medical emergency, categories 0 and 4 don't get immediate treatment or evacuation from the emergency, depending on capacity. You can't just go in the order that you see patients. You have to prioritize in a medical emergency, and trying to meet a deadline in design without user testing is responding to an emergency without a scale. Testing is what allows you to sort your features, bug fixes, and designs into an order of priority that lets you make tough decisions quickly. Without it, you can't effectively compare between competing priorities. And if you fail to do it, you'll end up dropping the items that you couldn't get to because they came last, not because they were the least important to your users. Slide 6. For example, at Federal Student Aid, we had a feature called the FAFSA Forecaster, which you can see here. About half of this flow gave a rough estimate of eligibility for aid prior to completing the FAFSA, and the other half helped users estimate their budget for college. It hadn't been updated in several years and was due to be replatformed to our new studentaid.gov website. But looking at the analytics data, it was very rarely used, so instead of replatforming it, we decided to decommission it. In fact, we got all the way to a planned end-of-life date when new legislation was passed, which required the tool's continued existence. And you can imagine how much time that left us for development. Now, the normal path for us would have been to save time by not reimagining what it could do, just repackage it and go. No testing, no design work, no new requirements. But we had a suspicion that the low usage was for a good reason, so we investigated a little further. We asked a large swath of users and partner organizations if they had any use cases for the tool, and we checked with our legal and policy teams on the new legislative requirement. And what we found was that users didn't have much use for the tool in general, but they really didn't have use for the budget estimation part at this time in the student aid lifecycle. And from our policy folks, we found out that the legislation only required the eligibility and family contribution parts, the first half of the tool. So we cut the entire second half. And that let us spend more time on the design of the product while still meeting the deadline. It was effective triage on a deadline, thanks to user input. Slide 7. So what did we learn? Well, one, if you don't ask your users, you're doing triage blind. And you won't be able to convince others of what to drop either. And two, don't forget that internal stakeholders are users too. Sometimes you need to look at what's prompting the request to get the flexibility you need to hit that deadline. Slide 8. Okay, so it helps you prioritize. But how does usability testing make you faster on a deadline with the work that you do have to do? Slide 9. Well, imagine for the past 3 hours, you've been in a back and forth about design and requirements, and it just won't end. Neither side will compromise. It's a stalemate. You can't reach consensus. Now imagine that you've got a big red button that you can press to just end the conversation and move forward to the decision instantly. No more arguments. Well, I would argue you do have that button, which is called user feedback. Because if marketing prefers teal and leadership prefers magenta, but green increases your completion rates, then green is what you go with. Usability testing helps you work faster through the design process by deflecting decisions, large and small, back onto users and their desired behavior. Slide 10. A recent real-world example for us was Loan Simulator, which, among other things, helps borrowers with student loans compare repayment plans. Some of you may be aware that during COVID-19, one of the emergency relief flexibilities provided to borrowers was a temporary 0% interest rate, in addition to the suspension of loan payments. And what we weren't aware of until it happened was that Loan Simulator was not able to handle that 0% interest rate. Instead, it was assuming 0% interest for the life of the loan and producing inaccurate results based on those calculations, because those loans can last for decades. We needed to fix it, obviously, but we couldn't roll out a full fix for some months, so we had to get a warning banner up fast. But not everyone agreed on the wording of that banner. And so we ended up with a messaging that was paragraphs long and dense with legalese, and taking way too long to come to a consensus on, because every day we delayed was a day that users were not understanding the inaccuracies that they were being presented with. So we took the messaging we had to users and we put it in front of them. And with that feedback, which was very, very clear and quite explicit, we got plain language wording approved without additional meetings or additional delays. Those direct quotes were the most persuasive thing, so that we internally could all get consensus on what to do. Slide 11. So the lesson learned, well, one, don't start off trying to dominate the discussion. Whenever you can, divert decisions back to your users and let them speak through testing and analytics. Teach your stakeholders to listen to users, and there will be a lot fewer things to argue about and ultimately slow you down. Slide 12. All right, so if you're not convinced yet, here's my final argument for usability testing on a deadline, and then we'll get to the practicalities. How testing lets you make products cheaper on a deadline. Slide 13. How? Well, because you're either going to pay for not listening to users now through testing, or later through rework. Somehow or other, you're going to pay the piper. It's amazing how often we don't have time to do testing, but we always find time to do it over when users reject the product. So yes, even on a deadline, make sure you're building something useful before you build it. It's easy to say, but hard to do. And remember that not you nor any other stakeholder can decide what useful is. Only your users can do that. And the easiest, fastest, and cheapest way to find out from users themselves what they think useful is through testing. Slide 14. I'll give you a quick example where we did not practice this. We had a new feature called the annual student loan acknowledgement. It was an agency priority, and the goal was to disclose to users the current state of their loan balance every year before they got new loans. And because it was going to become a requirement for all borrowers, we were in a rush to develop it and make sure it was stable. So we delayed testing until a time in the development cycle when we wouldn't be able to act on any findings and make changes before it shipped. And lo and behold, when that testing did come back, it turned out that in several key areas, rather than informing users, we were actually confusing them about their financial situation, the opposite of our goal with the product. So we launched, and then we had to immediately find the resources to do 2 more releases to fix the problem areas. I can assure you that 3 releases is definitely more expensive than 1. Slide 15. So the lesson, it's cheaper to pay now. Slide 16, but how? How do you pay now, even if you're convinced at this point that it's a good idea? How can you fit in user testing that usually takes weeks into days? Slide 17. I'll leave you today with 6 quick tips. And if you'd like more details about any of them, please feel free to reach out after the summit. And I'll put my contact information into the chat as well afterwards. So first, do guerrilla usability. Second, get to 85%. 3, understand that Paperwork Reduction Act. 4, user testing pools. 5, virtual testing. And 6, make it a habit.